Twitter 201 and how to use Twitter for business development. My name is Dave Scriven-Young, an attorney from Chicago, Illinois. I welcome everyone into the stream for today. As always, I go live at 8 a.m. Central to discuss the content for today. I also love to answer your legal questions, as well as any young lawyers out there who specifically want to ask questions and be mentored. I'm here to do that as well. So feel free in the comments, let me know, where you're from, what you're excited about for today's stream, and we'll get going. And actually, the one thing that occurred to me as I woke up this morning is that as we are going along in, things reopening, at least in Illinois, we've gone to phase 4, which means that many more things are opening back up. Not everything is open, mind you, but we're going through a lot of changes now. For us, at least, my church has reopened. I actually have, for many years, reffed hockey. Men's league is now opening up. So I'm reffing some games at night. And even my voice is a little raspy this morning for whatever reason. I think it's just, the changes that we're going through. Maybe I'm getting a little less sleep, and my routine has been changed up quite a bit. So I think it's important for all of us to remember as we go along to give ourselves a little bit of grace during this period of time opening, because, we've gone through some very significant life events, some very significant changes. We went from a normal routine to everything shutting down to spending significant amount of time at home. And I think that, we've had 3 months of doing that. And now we're going through another change where, maybe a lot of people are going back to work. As I said, even though I may not be going back to work totally every day downtown, certainly, my life has been changed a little bit in terms of, going out at night. And so, give yourself a little bit of grace. If you're waking up a little bit later, if you find that you're not as motivated, first thing in the morning, that's quite all right. I think a lot of people just know that a lot of people are going through the same thing that you're going through. And it's just, we have to now readjust. And it's going to be hard, I think, for everyone. So just remember, wherever you are in life, at this point in time, you got to give yourself some time to readjust, getting back into the swing of things, because you're not going to just be able to, turn that switch and be like, oh yeah, now we're going, back to work the way we were. We have to allow ourselves to make that adjustment and really take care of yourself. So this is the time to make sure that, you're eating right, that you are getting enough sleep, which, has been hard for me the last couple of nights. But we have to now readjust, take stock of where we are, and move forward. And, it might be a good time to also reevaluate your goals as well. Hopefully you're writing down your goals every day. Just remind yourself, okay, this is where I'm going. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it'll help you to get up in the morning with a smile on your face, hopefully, to look forward to what you have next. And just remember, to be grateful, because, as we move into, whatever phase your state is in, now you're able to do more. I don't know if movie theaters have opened up, but, eating inside of a restaurant had opened up in the last couple of weeks for us in Illinois. And just remember, a few weeks ago, we weren't able to do that. So be grateful for, the new things that are opening up. And we just have to remember, as we, move forward in time in the future, hey, remember when we couldn't do these things? Let's be grateful for, backyard barbecues. Let's be grateful for having friends over. Let's be grateful for the things that we have. So that's just, a short message for today, and just something that really spoke to me as I was getting up this morning, that things really have changed once again, and we have to allow ourselves a little bit of grace. to make that transition. So, hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Again, this is a live taping of the Lawyer Lifestyle Podcast. My name is Dave Scriven-Young, an attorney from Chicago, Illinois, and I'll be your host. This podcast takes you on a daily journey to discover key principles in the areas of marketing, sales, and leadership for attorneys. As a reminder, I go live at 8 a.m. Central on social media. I'm at Attorney DSY to discuss the material for today, to answer legal questions, and to mentor young lawyers. So if you have a burning question that you've always wanted to ask a lawyer, if you're a young lawyer and you wanted to ask a more experienced lawyer or something, without sort of the pressure of an office environment, please ask the question in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. So today we're going to be talking about Twitter 201 business development strategies, and this comes from Gary Vaynerchuk's Crushing It book. And when Gary Vee talks about business development, he's really talking about a request for collaborations, or a request, specific request for business. So as we go about thinking about what platform is best for our personal brand, the question is, why is Twitter better than others for business development, and why is it not as good as others? Because just remember, everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses in either being a presenter or being on video or the written word. And so we have to remind ourselves that, yes, even though there's a tremendous amount of variety in social media platforms, really there's only one that's right for us, that's totally right for us. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't broadcast on several different channels. You should. Like for example, I think I'm probably best on a podcast. I think I'm okay on video. I think that I'm pretty good. I'm a pretty good writer, but I think I'm best on a podcast. Having an outline and riffing from there. And so that's sort of my main mechanism. And then I broadcast on all these other channels because you have to be everywhere, right? But you have to choose one in particular that's going to be your specific platform. Mine is a podcast. Yours could be Twitter. So let's talk about why you might want to use Twitter, and why the pros and cons in terms of business development and having collaborations with folks and asking people for collaborations. Well, it actually, Gary Vee says, it might actually be easier to get a response to a direct message from someone on Twitter, because influencers, people that you want to get a hold of and collaborate with, they may actually be getting more and more requests and attention on Instagram. And so there's maybe too much noise on Instagram to cut through. And for something like Twitter, you might be able to capture their attention because not as many people are going there. And so, yeah, I mean, this might be one of those situations where even though Instagram may be becoming more popular than Twitter, it actually may be more useful in terms of business development to use Twitter. Now, when Gary Vee wrote this book, one of the things that he says is, Twitter has a verification system, so it's easier to know whether an account is real or not. Well, I know that Instagram also has a verification system, but what I can tell you is that Instagram, it is harder to figure out who's who for the most part. There's a lot of fan accounts, a lot of cloning fake accounts on Instagram, I found, because a lot of what I do is when I interview people on my legal power players segment for the Lawyer Lifestyle Podcast, or I have guests on for my Lawyers Emotional Intelligence Book Club, I always try to tag the people that I'm interviewing or having on as a guest host. Well, sometimes it's difficult to figure out who, what account is actually for this person on Instagram, where on Twitter, it's a little bit easier. And I'm not sure why that is. But if you're trying to figure out, which account is for the person that you're trying to reach, Twitter might be actually easier than that. Easier than Instagram, I should say. Number 3 is the retweet feature on Twitter gives you the ability to have instant awareness, and it can become viral. So One of the things that Instagram does not have, and I don't claim to be an expert on social media at all, but I know I use it quite a bit. And so, if you're watching in the comments, or if you have, if I say something wrong about this, please send me an email, send me a social media post, message me, let me know, if I'm wrong about this. But although I think there is a way to quote unquote repost on Instagram, it's not a function that's available when you're actually on the app. I think there's a way to do it. And, of course, you could probably take a screenshot of the post that you want to retweet or repost, I should say, and then post it yourself on Instagram. There's no just one button solution as far as I'm aware on Instagram. And so for Twitter, it's very interesting, so I participated in the Hamilton, live tweet when, Disney Plus went live with the Hamilton film. And it was really interesting sort of watching the dynamics and, watching Manuel Miranda talk about the show. But it was also interesting seeing what he was retweeting in terms of what people were saying, and that gave those people that he retweeted, um, you know, instant virality, right? So instantly, people who were just commenting on the show were now getting all of these people who were looking at their accounts probably because they had something interesting to say about Hamilton, and the star, director, and writer of Hamilton, of the Broadway show and of the film, gave that person a huge platform, right? And so that is something that I don't think is available on Instagram, but certainly is something that people use on Twitter every day. So that's an instant way to have more people looking at you, is when at least someone, influencer, somebody famous retweets one of your posts. But that could happen all the time. It doesn't have to be someone. It doesn't have to be a celebrity. It can be just anyone who is expanding your reach by retweeting. Number four is, it's acceptable to post many more times on Instagram, on Twitter, excuse me, than Instagram, right? Where on Instagram, people don't want to see, you know, 20 pictures a day, and that's typically not the way that works. Although you could, of course, use Instagram Story to do that. And that's actually a function that Twitter doesn't have, but it's because Twitter allows you, and it's more acceptable to tweet, 20 times at least, per day. And Gary Vee talks about in his book Crushing It, that he, maybe only posts, a couple of pictures on Instagram, but it, has, maybe 100 or 200 posts on Twitter per day. That probably includes replies as well, right? And so you have more of an opportunity to reach more people. You have more of an opportunity to spread your message as well by using Twitter. And then the fifth one is you can get noticed with comments, and talking more on the platform is better. So in other words, um, as I think we talked about yesterday, it's very acceptable to jump into a conversation with people on Twitter, and it is a true conversation, I think. Where in the comments or just replying to a tweet, where on Instagram it is more like you're commenting on a photo, and it's not necessarily a real conversation. I mean, yeah, of course, you can have a conversation on Instagram where you comment on a photo, then the person replies back, and then you reply to that comment. But it's a little more awkward, I think, than a Twitter conversation, right? And you can get many more voices, I think, typically involved in a Twitter conversation than you would in an Instagram conversation. It's just a different way of going about it. And so you probably have a better chance of getting your comment noticed. And by the way, your comment, or your reply, I should say, can get retweeted as well. And people do that. People like and comment on people who tweet. And so it is a real conversation, and that's the way, and that is a very acceptable way to communicate on Twitter. So at the end of the day, Gary Vee gave a very, I think, real world example of how Twitter can be used. And he talks about, a student who is interested in being a sportscaster when he, gets out of school. And he asks, the question about who has a better chance of getting an internship at ESPN, the unknown kid who sends in a resume along with 4,000 other people, or the kid who becomes a regular active presence on the Twitter feeds of the ESPN personalities and staff who need the help. So let's translate that into, what a lawyer can do with that, doing business development on Twitter. So, of course, if you have an asset in terms of your personal brand, so if you have a podcast like I do, or a video show that you bring guests on, the best way I found is, well, I'll be completely honest with you. The best way that I found is email. I actually don't do a lot of social media business development, at least for my show. I will go on and search people up before I contact them, just to see what they're talking about on Twitter and different platforms. But I found that there are actually fewer and fewer. I mean, I guess I wanted to say that you're few and fewer people who are on Twitter as lawyers, and that may be true, maybe not be true. But in terms of business development for lawyers, you may not actually be looking for lawyers unless, like I said, you have a podcast or something where you're seeking out someone for an interview and you want a lawyer. But if you're looking for clients, you're probably not necessarily looking for lawyers, unless you're looking for like a general counsel of a corporation. But you may be looking for just business owners, just like regular people. And so what you want to have in mind is, who are, or an industry or specific companies who you might be targeting. And then you can look them up, and then you can start commenting on some of their posts. And I think some of the barriers to doing that, that people often, I think, have is, isn't it creepy if I just like start commenting on all their stuff? I think it would only be creepy if you did not bring absolute value to the conversation and you just started randomly tweeting at them. I think that's as simple as it gets, right? If you are able to bring a real value to a conversation that they're having on Twitter, and then it's not going to look creepy. It's going to look like you're taking an interest in them, which I think people appreciate, because as anyone can relate who's on social media, if you are putting out a bunch of posts and no one is responding, and then you're just kind of like, oh, no one cares about what I'm doing. But it actually feels really good when somebody engages in a conversation with you. So certainly, I recommend actually think about who is in the industry that you are targeting. So if you're someone like me who practices construction law, it's great to go on and find people who are in the construction industry and follow them on Twitter, and then jump into those conversations. And if you think it's appropriate down the line, you can reach out to them, in a direct message, and see how you can collaborate together. It may not necessarily be, and you probably wouldn't ask them for, business on Twitter. But what you might want to do is send them a direct message after you've engaged in conversation with them online, in a post on Twitter, many posts on Twitter. Ask them, hey, I'm having this, webinar, or my firm is, presenting on this topic. I really thought that you might be interested. Here's a link. That's an easy way to have a more direct conversation with somebody without directly selling at them online. Because again, I think people hate when, they open their direct messages and people are just selling. But if you are able to find a way to, either add them to a newsletter list, or add them or invite them to a webinar or a coaching call or something that your firm is doing, for that specific industry, I think that's a great way to go about it. Another one of my practice areas is environmental, and for many years, I followed specific companies and specific influencers within, like, the manufacturing industry, for example. And so finding the right people to follow takes time. Engaging in these conversations take time. But if you put in the time, you have the time to put into it, and you bring value to a conversation, then that opens the door to these business development strategies and opportunities that Gary Vee is talking about, to collaborate, to invite people to events or webinars. So they've developed an interest in you during this conversation because you brought value to them. And then now you want to bring even more value to them by inviting them to an event or a webinar and the like. So that is, I think, a great way to use Twitter to develop business. And what I'd like you to think about for your daily action item is to think about who is your what is the client industry or specific clients that you think that you might want to go after in terms of business development targets, and then search them up online, search them up on Twitter. I mean, it's so easy to go on Twitter and to go in that search bar and search for either the name of the company, or if like the business owner or the general counsel or somebody whoever would be the person that would be hiring you, or someone who would be tangentially related to that person in the business chain, who could have influence in the hiring decision. It's a great way to search for them, follow them, and then look at whatever conversations that they're having, just as an initial step, because that'll help you to determine, number one, whether your potential clients are even on Twitter, because they may or may not be, right? Because I think there are certain types of people who may be more active on social media, like ESPN personalities. They certainly would be on Twitter, right? Because they're trying to expand their reach beyond their normal telecast or the like. But other lawyers and business people may not be on Twitter, but they might be. So you want to check whether your industry is very active on social media, but especially in this instance, Twitter. So I hope that helps everyone think about how to use Twitter for business development. Again, it takes a long time to do, and so that's why I think a lot of people don't necessarily use Twitter a lot for social media, especially for us lawyers. But it is definitely a way for a lot of people to bring value to others in a conversation, and then reach out to them in a very non-creepy way, in order to do some real business and to start that relationship. So hope everyone is well. Remember to give yourself a little grace as we enter into this new expansive world that we're now entering into as quarantines let up. Hope everyone is well. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will talk to you tomorrow at 8 a.m. Central for another edition of the Lawyer Lifestyle Podcast. Take care.